Welcome back to our continued series on Loki. So, season 2 dropped on Thursday, and I didn't get to watch it on Thursday since I was busy. And then I was busy on the weekend, and now it's Tuesday. So I'll be recording this almost a week after the first episode of season 2 dropped, but before episode 2 of season 2. Now, I know that there are people who have already seen episodes 1 to 4 during like pre-screenings, and I haven't looked at any of the details. I've tried to avoid everything online. Even though I've seen episode 1 now, I've also tried to avoid any discussion on episode 1, just avoiding anything that might potentially spoil episode 2, 3, or 4, anything that might influence what I think about episode 1. This podcast is more so meant to be my own thoughts and feelings on various media, whatever I might choose to cover. And I don't necessarily want to, at least for this series, get influenced by somebody else's opinions or ideas or theories or anything like that. I kind of want to make my own and see what I can, I don't know, see if I can kind of guess what might happen, see if I'm proven right or wrong in a future episode, or like the predictions that I had for season 2 back when I completed season 1, or as I was going through each episode in season 1. Well, I could already say that there are a few things that I had thought about, predicted, or guessed at that are clearly not the case for season 2. Just episode 1 alone was enough to show that some of my ideas were clearly off. And maybe if I looked at some other people's theories online, I might have seen something like that would have led me in a direction to be able to predict it. But I also know there had been leaks for season 2, like months and months ago. I don't know if any of those leaks were legit. I never looked at them back then, and I still haven't looked at them now. Maybe once season 2 is complete, I might go back and look at all the leaks that had been posted months and months before season 2 ever released and see if any of them lined up, see if they were true or false. I think it might be interesting to do something like that. Might also be interesting to go back and look at all the ideas that I had for season 2 and see which ones of those are correct or incorrect. I'm pretty sure most of them, if not all of them, will probably be incorrect, but it doesn't really matter. So, before I begin, I was going to do season 2 a little bit differently than I did season 1, since I was in a rush for time for season 1 to try to get it out before season 2 started. I kind of watched through the episode and commented as I was watching through it. I wanted to, for season 2, to start making notes and kind of go through my notes instead, and maybe that would have made it a lot more coherent or flowed better. I don't know. But I started making notes and it seemed just as, I guess, all over the place as I would have talked during watching the episode, anyways. So I kind of feel like maybe that's alright to do for this. Obviously, for movies, I'm not going to do that. That would be a lot to record. I think it'll be a whole lot of pausing in between. I know for the episodes, I do pause in between, especially when major scenes are happening. Though that was more because I couldn't exactly remember a lot of season 1 because I had only watched it like twice back or 3 times, I think, when it had first come out. Like, as it was coming out, I was watching every week. And then after that, like a few months later, I think I rewatched the entire series, almost binge watched the entire thing throughout. And then I think a little bit later, I had just watched through or skimmed through, like some months even after that, some of the episodes. But that was like a year ago or more. So it just made more sense because I didn't have much time. It was like 2 days until season 2 comes out. That I was like, okay, if I wanted to get this recorded, if I wanted to get my ideas out before I'm spoiled for season 2 in any way, then I would need to watch while recording my reactions or my ideas or my feelings and all of that. And I kind of think because episodes are short and because I could watch through them really quickly, it might be a good format to do that if I wanted to do a TV show in the future, which I'm planning to do for Secret Invasion for sure, because I have a lot of thoughts on that one. And I might do that for other series as well from Marvel. I don't know if there's any other series in general that I would want to do that for. A lot of the series that I'm a huge fan of, they have quite a bit of seasons and a lot of episodes. So I might rather make notes on those and then, like for sure for Stranger Things, I absolutely want to try to guess what the new season will be about. So that's like a year away. So I still have time for that. And for other series, maybe something like The Sandman. I really like that series. It's I don't remember actually when season 2 is supposed to come out, but I know there's supposed to be a season 2. I kind of want to do something on that, though I don't really have too much ideas other than just giving my thoughts and feelings on how much I really like the series. Um, for other Marvel content specifically, maybe something on WandaVision. Yeah, for sure WandaVision. Because I feel like WandaVision was also another series like Loki that was just really well done. And I think that I definitely have opinions on how Wanda's character was used in the Doctor Strange movie and how or where I see the character going in the future. Now, for Wanda's character, I do have more knowledge on the comic book lore behind her character and some of the storylines within the comic book. For Loki, I don't have that. For almost every other character, I don't have that. But Wanda was so interesting to me and seemingly so important. I think she still is important. I think she'll still play a major role in the MCU going forward. But I was so captivated with her story, and I felt like it almost was like Marvel kind of went in a different direction than I would have thought her character would have been in the comic books. But then when I saw the comic book descriptions of her storyline within various comics, it seemed like they pulled a lot of information straight from the comic books and a lot of story. And it almost seemed like she's more one for one with the comic books. Almost. I know they're making their own story and they're taking bits and pieces and not really going directly with the storyline. But I almost see like her story in the future of the MCU might align quite a bit with a lot of the stuff from the comics. But I'll probably talk about that when or if I do a series on WandaVision. I probably will. So I'm thinking for season 2, episode 1 of Loki, I'll just basically do the same thing where I'll have it playing. None of the audio or video would be showing on this podcast, and only my voice will be there, and only my thoughts, ideas, observations. I'll try to say what kind of timestamp I'm at, because I will be playing it fast. And since I just watched this like a few days ago, it should be fresh enough so that I have a lot to say, but also so fresh that I may not have given enough time to think about a lot of stuff. But it is only season 1, episode 1, or season 2, episode 1, and we still have like 5 more episodes to go, so there's a lot more content left for season 2. And I think that my ideas may change episode to episode, probably. I have seen, I think I've seen like 1 or 2 posts on Twitter, and I'm not calling it X. I've seen 1 or 2 posts on Twitter that kind of made me think in a slightly different direction that I may not have thought about. So I'll point that out when I get there. But the episode length, 45 minutes, 15 seconds. I'm playing at 1.23 times the speed in case anybody wants to follow along, though I might end up pausing the episode in between, and I might very well forget to tell you I've paused the episode somewhere in between. There would be no way for you to know. So let me start. And we start with a recap of season 1. And I really like how they did the recap, picking out all the important pieces and kind of weaving the story of season 1 through all these important little bits of knowledge that you would need to know to get enough background and enough of the story leading into season 2. So I did definitely like that. And it does make sense. If anybody were to join and just start watching from season 2, then they would kind of get to see without needing to actually watch season 1. And I feel like a lot of the movies and the TV shows can do something like that, to very quickly go over all the important or relevant knowledge that you would need to watch that movie or that TV show. So you don't have to watch like 50 movies and 30 TV shows or something like that in order to understand, the 80th movie in the series. Just the important stuff really quickly going over, or maybe even sprinkling the information throughout within the movie. You could kind of understand. Obviously, any fan that would have watched throughout everything, or even any fan that not only watched the series and the movies, but also know the comic books, would have a better grasp of noticing or catching any little thing that somebody else may not. Obviously, because I don't read the comic books, there's probably a whole bunch of things that I would have missed. But I don't really plan on reading the comic books. I don't even have time to watch the series when it first came out, so it was... If I'm going to be reading the comic books as well, I don't think I'd be able to do that. But that's okay. I don't think I'd need to. And I know there's some people, like, adamant that the comic books are far superior. But that's neither here nor there. So about 3 minutes in, a little bit before 3 minutes in, you have the chase sequence. Loki running from Mobius. Mobius clearly doesn't remember him. And then the desperate plea, Mobius, it's me. They crash into the Kang statue. That's unfortunate. And we see Casey mopping the floor, or polishing the floor. And then this crash scene, I believe, was in the trailer. But I don't remember if it looked exactly like this. I'll need to go back and check that. Then Loki just plops out of the vehicle. You see the spherical TV hanging over there. A little oddity I'll point out here is that TV that's hanging there, the screen looks too small for anybody to really see what's going on from their desks. Like, all the little detail, as the camera is kind of going closer, you can't really see all that clearly. So I'm wondering if the TV's kind of just for show, or if anything major happens, I don't know, they'll gather around it. It almost seems like there should be a bigger screen, especially seeing the kind of technology that they technically have, the time technology. And now a desperate plea to Casey, believing that he might know him, he might be able to help him, but unfortunately not. And then Loki glitches through time. Spoilers, he's glitching through time. And he's somewhere else now. In the same place. And then Casey is there. This one is the one that we know. The one that Loki knows. The one that knows Loki. I like the little detail that he's holding the handbook, the TVA handbook, in his hands in this scene. And then he asks if the crack's always been there. Like, yes. And we see now the TV's a different TV. It's a much bigger TV and it's so much clearer to see what's on it. And he tells him where Mobius is, and as soon as he turns around, Loki is gone again. And cue the intro. With a little Loki characters flashing between different type fonts, ending on the classic one that they've chosen to go with. And now we go back to seeing Mobius and B15 looking at the completely fully branched timelines. The multiverse is free. Now, what B15 is saying is that everybody should be notified or told of what's going on. And I'm going to pause here at 6 minutes, almost 7 minutes in, because I think this is important. The two of them talking and the conversation that they're having being one on the side of we should tell everybody immediately so they can choose what they want to do with that information. Continue working for the TVA, go and live their lives somewhere on the timeline. It's clear that she's right. Everybody deserves to know that they've been completely brainwashed, all their memories have been removed, and they have a life, or they had a life, somewhere on the timeline at some point. Whether or not they still have a place somewhere on the timeline currently, from where they're plucked from and that was pruned away, I think technically they should. There should be some empty space somewhere in the infinite multiverse of the exact place that they were plucked from that now exists again because everything was basically reset and was, freed. So even though those timelines were pruned, there should be a new timeline that sprung forth where something exactly like that has happened. And I think I'll talk a little bit more about this later on, but a little bit of spoilers for this episode, though you should have already seen the episode if you've listening to this podcast, is that we know that Loki is hopping between time within the TVA. So the TVA, even though it's like a separate dimension or reality or something like that, it still lives alongside the regular universe that we know of and all the branching timelines that exist from that universe. So it always had lived alongside the sacred timeline, and now that there's branching happening and the multiverse is set free from the sacred timeline, it still technically lives alongside that and has its own timeline or continuum. It has a past, it has a present, it should have a future, and because of that, I'm thinking it technically should also have branching timelines as well, because it doesn't really make sense that it doesn't have that unless it was built that way in some capacity. Like it was built in such a way that it's self-pruning and it only has one continuum or stream or string or whatever you might want to call it. One beginning, one middle, one end. Though if that were the case, then it seems like the entire story of the TVA from beginning to end is deterministic. If it had branching timelines, I would still argue it's deterministic, but it's more when following this one Loki or this one Sylvie or anybody else who remains within the TVA, within its universe. You could kind of say that if you're following along any one, you don't know which branch they'll end up on or which story you'll follow. So from that point of view, it's kind of non-deterministic. But if you take into account all possible futures, everything's deterministic. It just depends on which branch you're going down, because you have every single possible branch. So you have every single possible beginning, and every single possible end, and every single possible in between. So you have literally everything. So it's, everything is already determined. But beyond all that, let's throw all that aside. You know that there is a continuum within the TVA. There's a past, a present, and a future. And there should be a way to figure out from the past version of the TVA where and when somebody was plucked from, and then in the future give them the opportunity to go back to that same point and place and branch of the mainstream timeline of the multiverse and just return unless that's far too complicated or something else occurs or whatever it may be. Them being given that choice, and with the powers of basically time travel that they have, they should be able to return people, whoever wants to return. Now, maybe some people don't want to return to their original lives because it was terrible. Or maybe they'll be returned to the point where they might end up dead, or they find out they were a terrible person and they're not anymore, and they want to live a better life. You could always find somewhere else in the infinite multiverse, if they don't want to continue working for the TVA, to put them. So I'm fully on the side of B15, where people should be told, but I also understand where Mobius is coming from. That it would cause complete chaos if you just start telling people, like just willy nilly running around to every desk and start telling people, or, blasting it over the speaker system if they have a speaker system. I think they have a speaker. It would just, everybody would be chaos. Everybody would be running around. Some people wouldn't believe you. Some people would be violently against everything you're telling them. Some people would be completely distraught. There'd be a wide range of different emotions and feelings and actions based on knowing that was the case. And a lot of people would just be confused and want more information, etc., etc. So it would need to be a slow and careful approach where you would go through and tell people. But I still believe people should be told and not kept working as part of this TVA machine. Even though technically, the oddity here is that I don't know what they're currently doing. You see all the people in the background working and calm and casual as if business as usual, even though the sacred timeline is clearly gone now and it's all branched away. At the very least, the people in this room that are looking at the monitor should kind of be in a somewhat panicked state. Maybe there should be more alarms or bells ringing or something like that, unless they've turned those off. Or, it looks like they're a bit too calm, but I don't really know how the structure of the TVA works. I don't know how much capacity these other background characters have, technically, in universe, all these other background people, if they even are being, if they even know what to do in a situation like this, or they're just expecting, whoever is in charge will just deal with this and we'll just follow instructions or orders or whatever. And until then, we just continue doing whatever our job description is. And we don't worry about that other stuff. Somebody else will take care of that. We're doing what we do. And then later, when you meet Obi, you see that he didn't even know that the multiverse has just branched off into infinity. He has no idea. So that it could be tons and tons of TVA workers all over the place just have no idea this has happened. And only the people who kind of need to know, or who are in charge of looking at that kind of stuff, noticed it and realized, oh, this is a problem. We need to do something about this. Mass panic, but not really showing it to other workers. Maybe other workers notice that there's a bit of a panic going on, but, that's not their panic. They have to keep doing their own job. Either way. Then we have Casey coming in and saying that Loki was here and then he just suddenly disappeared. And Mobius's temp pad doesn't seem to be working. And now we're introduced to X5. I think X5 is going to play somewhat of a big role in this season, because he clearly seems to be the top agent of one of the other, I believe, judges. The Skidoo is gently whispering to him. Jet ski. But either way, I feel like X5 is going to end up being one of the main antagonists, I guess. Where it seems like not only is he hell-bent on continuing business as usual and pruning timelines and all of that, but he seems very much dedicated and loyal to that particular judge, who seems also business as usual. We continue pruning as always. We fix all of this. We put it back. And Loki pops back in. Casey gets a heart attack. And then Loki tries to go over to where Mobius is. And I had said previously, what happened to the other judges? Where might they be? Are there other judges? Clearly, season 2 answers that, and it's like, yep, there are other judges. And it seems they have their own people, their own organizational structures under them. I wonder what specifically they do, if it's any different than Ravona, if they work different cases. I don't know. They could, because Sacred Timeline could have many bubbling points all over the place, dealing with lots of different things. And Loki pops in, and it's completely empty. Judges' Council is empty. He notices, though, Kang's face on the wall. I don't know why there's like 5 faces showing like the side profile to the front and then to the other side. And then we hop back to present day, quote unquote present day. Mobius and B-15 walk in. It's really interesting, and striking. It's a triangular table, which is weird. And then they just have the head just laying on the table. And it's also interesting that they were able to put out an order not to prune. And now the judges are like, explain. The make it make sense is interesting. Because clearly all the judges are in the dark as well. And Ravonna just pops out and leaves everybody. So they're missing her. And we're back to Loki, because she's the only one who probably knew anything at that point. And they only have the recordings of Loki and Mobius talking. And what are they supposed to believe? What are they supposed to think of this situation? Clearly their entire operation has fallen apart, because all the branches have formed everywhere and are going way beyond the danger zone of the 2 red lines. And now Loki listening to this recording. Clearly a recording of Kang, but it sounds like a different Kang. I'm gonna pause this, because a lot is happening. Pausing at 12:14. So it sounds like it's another Kang that she's talking to. And clearly, the Ravonna that we see in season 1 doesn't remember at all meeting Kang. So very likely her memory was erased as well. And at some point in the far past, when Kang was planning to make the TVA or planning to rule over the multiverse, she was part of it, and she decided to help him. Now, I know from the comic books to some degree that she is kind of his partner, love interest type thing in the comic books. So I think that maybe they'll be going in that direction and showing more of that. It's odd, though, that he kind of put her as a regular agent, as we saw in the flashback during season 1. And then she was eventually promoted to one of the judges, which is a much higher position, it looks like. But she's not by his side. She's not in his palace at the end of time. So I wonder what happened between the 2 of them. Maybe there was a falling out. Maybe he just didn't want to have her live there with him for eternity, just kind of wasting away, twiddling their thumbs forever. It could also be that he's found a way to make sure he doesn't age anymore. It could be that well, I don't know if that's true, because I was gonna say maybe she does age, and you have to replace her every so often, but that would be really a dark path to go down. And it also doesn't seem like that's the case. Because I'm thinking something along the lines of, they all age, and at a certain point you just replace them. Or they end up dying during some mission, and you just have to replace them. Because there's infinite timelines branching or bubbling out from the sacred timeline that you'll have to prune anyways. If you find one of them there, you could just replace an old one with that one. Though I think that would be really messed up, and there's no reason why in the TVA, and with all of Kang's scientific knowledge that he couldn't just make all his TVA agents just not age, or make it a property of the TVA or that reality that they just don't age there. And they might even be protected from aging while hopping into the sacred timeline anytime they need to prune something away. Though they're only there for like a few minutes at most, so I don't know if that'll matter too much, but I think that it would be way too dark if they go down a path where, yeah, they're just being replaced. So something must have happened between that original Ravonna and Kang so that she remained in the TVA without any of her memories. And he just kind of sat at the end of time, just governing over things, I guess. And of course, something must have happened somewhere in between where he's like, okay, my face being on everything and my statue being everywhere, this isn't working for some reason. I'm going to have to replace that whole story with a new layer of propaganda, removing me further from the TVA, and of course wiping everybody's memories, and put in place these timekeepers. 3 of them instead of just 1 of them, but whatever. I guess it doesn't matter. Maybe that's why the table is a triangle, representing 3 timekeepers, but I don't know if it matters. Continue. Clearly B-15 doesn't care about proper protocol, because at this point, it's like, why are we still doing proper protocol? Everybody needs to know we're all variants. Everybody needs to know what's actually happening. I like that to hell with the record. Pointing out that everybody's a variant. I wonder what's going through their heads. It almost seems like they don't believe her, or if they just don't care. And of course, one of the other judges saying, this changes nothing. There's a robot head on the table. Why is there a judge just asleep? Clearly, I really like the designs of their costumes and their looks, because all the judges are wearing outfits as if they're soldiers, and highly decorated soldiers. And from a soldier's point of view, especially that one that's talking right now, and she may very well be the leader of the military branch of the TVA, which would make a lot of sense. If that's the case, then clearly, from a military point of view, you shouldn't question the mission. You go with the mission, you truly believe with every fiber of your being that the mission is good and is just and is meant to bring about peace or happiness, and you're protecting people and you're doing the right thing, and people's lives have been lost under your leadership, and you know that as a general, that people's lives have been lost for this cause, for this mission that you've been on for who knows how long. I don't know how long the TVA agents believe they've been alive for, if they even have a sense of time, really. But you've been doing this work, this good work, this mission, since forever, without questioning, without fail. You've watched comrades die. You've given your entire life and everything you are to this mission. And she's clearly highly decorated. There's a lot of medals on her clothing. So being in that position, how could you now all of a sudden start questioning the mission? Even if there's like a robot head laying on the table from one of the supposedly creators of the TVA, one of the sacred timekeepers, one of the, quite literally what they might consider as gods. And it's like a robot head that's just lying there. And you hear this recording of Loki and Mobius, and Loki saying, oh, they're all variants. And now B-15 saying it again, they're all variants. And X5 saying that, oh, this changes everything. Of course it doesn't. It changes nothing. The mission is still the mission. From the point of view of a military leader, the mission is still the mission. We do not question the mission. We're doing this for the greater good. It's always been for the greater good. Nothing changes, even if the leaders fall, even if the leaders aren't who they say they were. The mission is still a good mission, because everything you've done up till now, you've convinced yourself that the mission is still good, and the mission is just. And you've written it in your brain that it is good regardless of anything else, because you've seen the good that it does. You've seen the sacred timeline, probably. Most likely they have. You've seen the chaos variants can cause, especially Sylvie. You've seen all of the bad, or the quote unquote bad, and you convince yourself that these things are bad. You convince yourself that these variants, these other timelines or branches, are all bad. You've worked it around in such a way that all of this stuff to you and all this stuff that you're doing is just and right, regardless of where it came from. So the mission doesn't change. No matter what anybody says, we're all variants, sure. That doesn't change the mission. That doesn't change the fact that the mission is good. The timekeepers are false or robots or we're being controlled by someone. That doesn't change the mission. It doesn't change anything, though I don't think at this point they know that those things are being controlled by someone. And now this particular individual that's talking seems to be more in charge of this council. Because she's like, you've made your position clear, and you've made your position. And now questioning the verdicts that they've always handed down. I had questioned that during season 1, and I was like, where are the verdicts coming from? It almost seems like they'd always hand down a guilty verdict no matter what. And it seems like it's just a show or a scam or a sham, or, it's just they're doing this for no reason. Because they'd always find them guilty because they're all variants. So anybody that makes it to the point where they have a court case before a judge, they have no hope. Nothing happens unless I'm right, and it's a process where Kang can be like, okay, this person can be converted to a TVA agent. Let's keep that one. But beyond any of that, it seems like it makes absolutely no sense to go along with a trial or have a judge, because it'll always be guilty. Because they are guilty, they're a variant. There can be no other ruling. And I'm wondering if they themselves have never questioned this. It could have also been that Kang, hands down the rulings every single time as well. Or, the case information is sent to the timekeepers, and they believe that the timekeepers would send back a ruling, or the timekeepers do send back a ruling, and it's always been guilty. But it's never been shown that that's the case. It looks like the judges are making the decision right there and then. And you kind of have to defend yourself. Of course, you can't, and you're not given a lawyer. You're not even given a clear understanding of how the TVA or the process even works. So it almost seems like it'll always be guilty no matter what, and there's nothing you can do. And they should know that. They should know that every single time they give a ruling. And they should have known that every single time they give a ruling. And saying that it's extremely difficult to turn your back on everything you've ever believed in. But they have to change. That's true. And they do have to all accept that. And saying, I can do anything, seems like such a powerful line. And then telling the TVA to stop pruning. That was the right move, clearly. I'm thinking they all, or at least her, might not still be convinced of doing that, but I think they're willing to pause and try to figure out and get a better grasp of the situation. And I think that's the right move in this situation. Not doing that could be a detriment to whatever has happened here, because something major has happened. All the timelines have branched forward. There is no sacred timeline anymore. It's just a mess. So I think instead of, charging forward and trying to fix everything when you don't have the full story or the picture, is clearly the wrong move. And you see later on that it looks like this military individual takes a whole bunch of military personnel and just decides to charge forward, as if they're planning to fix it all. And that's the wrong move, because you have no idea what's going on. You have no idea if you should be doing that or if you should be taking a different approach. It almost looks like they're just gonna go in and start a war. against all these branching timelines. Which, even if they come to the conclusion that all the timelines should be pruned, it still may not be the right move to just blindly march forward. So taking the time to try to understand the situation as it is now is the right move, and is the level-headed and clear right move. Now Loki pops in, or glitches in, and then Loki explaining that they found him, the man at the end of time, as he explains later, and then uses the time stick to destroy the wall behind him, revealing, instead of the timekeepers being there, that the face of Kang is there. The guy who built the place, who stole their lives. Now clearly Loki looks distraught, and he has been glitching through time. Looks painful. And I think Mobius did make the right move, ushering him out of the room to calm him down. So them trying to figure out what's happened at the end of time, and saying that, okay, the timekeepers were fake, but there is somebody behind it all that's real, so the mission doesn't change. Clearly it's right and just and good. I think it was the wrong move for Mobius to have left the room for too long. It doesn't matter, though. Because I don't know if he would have been able to control the situation, or calm the situation, or stop that individual, that judge, or military person, high-ranking general or something, from doing what she was already probably going to do. And Loki freaking out about Sylvie and the decision, and everything that happened at the end. Saying it's a draw. Both kicking each other through simultaneously. Now, what Mobius is saying is all correct. Just focus on what we know. He's trying to get Loki to move past he who remains, this is his kingdom. Such a good line. I'm surprised Mobius hasn't come to the conclusion that his memories had been wiped. But I don't think it has been that long since all the chaos had happened anyways. But Loki calming down and putting things into perspective and focusing on what he actually knows. That's the right move to make. Because he's being a little bit all over the place and a little bit panicky and a little bit, you know, all the emotions and the stuff from the very recent past just flooding in. It looks terrible when he glitches out. Very much like Spider-Verse. It looks painful. It looks very painful. Now, of course, Loki worrying about getting back to the end of time. Sylvie. Them clicking that almost last button. I believe in the next elevator scene, it happens again. He clicks the... I can't keep looking at it. It looks terrible, it does. I feel really sorry for the other person in this elevator. They couldn't even say anything, that's how bad it looked. He who remains. The arrogance. Last man standing. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Then they find another elevator after going to almost what looked like the bottom floor, and now he's using a shoe to click what looks like the next bottom floor. So it's the bottom floor of the first elevator and the bottom floor of this second elevator. And down this corridor with a whole bunch of filing cabinets, and into this room that looks like it just has everything. And he descends from the sky in this is such a cool little harness thing. I think he's one of my favorite characters now. Loki, I want to introduce you to. And he doesn't remember his name. Ouroboros. How long has it been? 3 or 4? 400 years. How did he get off on the wrong floor? This is the bottom of the bottom. This scene is so awkward. He wants to be so nice. Mobius just wants to, but he clearly doesn't remember anything. I'm wondering, this could be a hint that his memory was wiped sometime between meeting Obi and now, between those 400 years. And it could be that other TVA agents, if something ends up happening, they start remembering something, or they get, I don't know, maybe too out of control, or something could happen. They could uncover some information they shouldn't know. It's possible that their memories could be wiped in between. Like, not just we've stolen somebody from one of the branching timelines, and we've converted them to an agent, and that's when the memory is wiped. But any point after that, the memory could also be wiped. And I'm wondering if maybe that might have happened, and all he remembers is, how to navigate, how to get around, where this floor is. Like, he clearly knew how to get here, like, straight away. They didn't get lost along the way. But he doesn't remember Obi, even though clearly he remembers exactly how to get here. So I'm thinking that some parts of his memory were probably wiped in between. So Obi clearly remembers him, though he doesn't get much of visitors. Reunited. And Obi's not taking any offense to it, I like that. Or at least it seems like he's not. It almost looks like he's running a lot more than he should be running by himself. And it also looks like he's the type of character, and I really like this type of character, that just hidden away in the basement, but is integral to everything working and knows literally everything because of the position that he's in. But there's also an oddity to this whole situation, to Obi. And then again, another scene from the trailer. You know that? Yeah. You've seen that? Yeah. And Loki ends up in the past. And let me pause it here when he's like, Ouroboros, may I call you Obi? And he's like, I like that. There's an issue here. There's a clear issue. I'm not being nitpicky, I'm just being fun. So don't read too much into this issue being an actual issue, it's just fun. And everything that I say during these podcasts is just for fun. Don't take anything too seriously, obviously. If you've gotten this far, you should know that, but don't take anything too seriously. The issue I see is Loki finds out his nickname from him because he was called Obi at some point in the past. Now we clearly see that Loki was the one who calls him Obi in the past. He's like, Ouroboros, can I call you Obi? And Obi's like, oh, I like that. So clearly he was never called that before. Very, very likely he was never called that before. This is the first time he's hearing that nickname for himself. This is where he gets that nickname for himself. He gets it from Loki. But where does Loki get it from? He gets it from Obi. But where does Obi get it from? He gets it from Loki. We've created a paradox all of a sudden. There's no beginning or end to this. We've created an Ouroboros. His name itself, or his nickname that he ends up getting, is a paradox. It has no beginning, it has no end. Where'd the original information for how he was called that come from in the first place? There is technically a solution to this, and I believe in the Avengers movie, in Endgame, they tried to reconcile that with time being a linear thing, and it not being like a loop, but it just events continue and continue. So anything that affects the past just propagates on forward, and it doesn't create any kind of paradox. But again, I think I need to go back and re-listen to or watch how they explain that, because somewhere in my mind back then I was like, okay, that makes sense. And then after that I'm like, does it really make sense? I don't know if it actually makes sense. But I'm sure you could just hand wave it away. It doesn't really matter all too much. It's just a little fun thing that they did here with Obi and his nickname. Time slipping. It's impossible to decide to put TVA. You just saw it happened. And he's having trouble reconciling that. I've never seen anything close to that happening before. Wait. There was one time. Long time ago, he came to me complaining about time slipping. This, I think, is good enough evidence for me to say that I'm right. That Obi's memory has never been erased. Not for the 400 years in between meeting Loki, or even longer, whenever he had met Loki back in the past, to this present where he's talking to Mobius. Whereas, you know that Loki had hopped right at the beginning of this episode back in time and met a Mobius from back then and was being chased. And Mobius did not remember him back then and did not remember ever meeting him in the past or even reference that at all when Loki had hopped back to the future. He has no recollection of that past happening, of meeting Loki back then. And B-15 may not have any recollection either, because I believe he hops back and sees both of them right at the end of season 1. And during all of season 1, there's no reference to that happening in the past. During season 2, Mobius is all confused about where Loki's like time slipping to or hopping to or anything like that, or what's happening with him. You know, where he's glitching out to. And has clearly no recollection that, oh, I remember from way back in the past, I had seen you. And the same with Casey, the same with B-15, and I don't know if he encountered anybody else. The rest are just kind of background people. But when he had the conversation with Casey, it's like, has that crack always been there? Yeah, as long as I've known. Clearly, he should have remembered a truck crashing into the TVA, Loki flopping out, and then that dropping. And all of the announcements of this variant on the loose. He should have remembered. Mobius should have remembered. B-15 should have remembered. None of them remember. So during the 400 or however many year period, all of their memories have been wiped except for Obi. And he's still talking to him in the past, and he is still remembering as it's going on. Yet nobody else seems to remember. And I really like these scenes. How they keep switching between past and present in the exact same conversation. It is just so good. I really like how they did that. I really like how they've done the entirety of episode 1, to be fair. It's so good. if it continues like this, I think I'd like season 1 better than, or season 2 better than season 1. It just took it to a new level, a new goodness, a brilliance. One temporal aura extractor. And he does actually do have the extractor, and he left it right there next to him the whole time. And he does seem like the type of person who just has everything here. And everything has its kind of messy place. To be fair, I'm kind of like that too. Maybe that's why I like this character. Spend too long in the loom, your skin gets peeled right off of you. And Loki has to violently rip himself from every thread of in time and space, all at once. So let me pause here at like 26 minutes, 30 seconds in. Because he's just telling Loki that he has to violently rip himself from all of time, basically. Now, what I had thought when I had first watched this was that Loki had to destroy himself and all his other variants across time. That's clearly not the case. For whatever reason, it might have to do with He Who Remains empad thing. It looked like almost a wristwatch, but cool little, cracked aesthetic of it, like his castle had. Just seemed like the same type of, I don't know, granite or marble or whatever. It's probably not any of that kind of material. It's probably some other material altogether, but it has that kind of look or aesthetic to it. What I had believed was that, when he was pushed through back into the TVA by Sylvie using that same, I'll call it a watch, using that same watch, that something happened to him in that moment. And originally, during season 1, I thought, or when I watched a trailer for season 2, and at the end of season 1, I thought he was just in some other timeline, or the TVA had changed. Now that they had freed all timelines, the TVA either changed in response to that, or the TVA, there's like multiple TVAs for each different branch in the new multiverse. But clearly that doesn't seem to be the case. Instead, he was sent to the past. And I had thought that his time slipping was because he had no set universe anymore, because everything's branching off. And this Loki is a unique Loki, that when everything started branching, he wasn't necessarily in any particular universe anymore. So he doesn't really have one to really return to, so it's punting him across time, trying to find him the place that he belongs to. Now with the time slipping explained, and the fact that there isn't multiple TVAs, it just seems like one TVA, past, present, future. It seems like something was done to him where he's kind of scattered throughout time, or he's kind of linked to other places along the timeline of the TVA, and it just ends up pulling him, almost like there's a bungee cord or multiple bungee cords attached to it, and they're attached to different points in the TVA's past, present, and future, and he's just bouncing between all of these different points. I'm wondering if He Who Remains did that on purpose. I doubt that Sylvie had done that on purpose, though maybe for some reason she might have done that, or accidentally done that. I think maybe it's just an accident, or the way she sent him back wasn't correct, and it ended up happening like that. I assume we'll find out the answers in this season, but I had honestly thought that he had to prune like all his variants. But luckily that's not the case, because I thought that was going to be weird. He just has to prune himself, and then the extractor will extract him from all the places he might have been linked to or bungee strapped to. And those connections will all be, chopped away as soon as he prunes himself, and then you just collect him back, and then reconstruct him, I guess. So he doesn't end up in that end of time place, and he doesn't end up being lost as like throughout time or anything like that. He just ends up back as a whole Loki in the place where he belongs, in the time along the TVA's timeline where he belongs. So him kind of hopping in the trailer where you get to see him with like a wacky inflatable tube dude and him hopping to other places. And I think he had even hopped to, or not hopped, but glitched to a whole bunch of random places in what looked like the regular time stream, the multiverse. I'm guessing all of that was just fake, and he is actually hopping in those scenes, or something else happens to him, and what they do here doesn't fix it, and he does end up hopping or glitching. But yeah, Loki seems fine with no, when you fall into a black hole, you turn to spaghetti. Well, the less you know about that, the better. I don't think that's actually true though. The whole black hole thing, I don't think you spaghettify. I think if a black hole is big enough, you just don't have that happen to you. But if a black hole is small, I don't know if it's spaghettification or you just disintegrate. Though it likes to be depicted in pop culture, or people say that it's spaghettification, I don't know if that actually happens. I don't know if that's actually supposed to happen, or that's the understanding of how gravity time space work. And them telling Obi, oh, the power's been flickering throughout the entire TVA. He clearly and immediately knows what that means. And the scene where B-15 joins them now, and you see the four of them just walking like this. Absolutely brilliant. The TVA guidebook. One on every desk within the TVA. The detailed guide on literally everything. And he wrote it himself. That is such a powerful statement right there. That he wrote the instruction manual to basically everything within the TVA himself. And it's something that every single agent should have with them at all times, either in physical book form, or on their computers, or on their temp pads, or everywhere. And at 28 minutes, when they reach this door to what we later find out is like the viewing area for the loom, I honestly thought that this was like the perfect place to end the episode. And then I had like hovered my mouse and I saw that, oh, there's so much more episode left. And that was just amazing. So much had already happened. So much that it feels like, this is a complete episode. It was so good already, and there's more. I was so happy. And then walking into this brightly lit room. Like, I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see it. The camera pans over, and it's too bright to see. And then it dims, and you get to see it. And it wasn't built or meant to weave together multiple branches. It was only ever meant to loom together one sacred timeline, I guess. And let me pause here. I think there's a problem with that. If this thing was built by Kang, then there's no problem. But I'm wondering, if it was built by Kang, what existed before Kang? Was there a loom that weaved time together? Or was there nothing and time just kind of weaved itself together? If Kang didn't build this, and it had always existed, then in all likelihood, well, something had to have built this, clearly. So there has to be something else, some god, some being, that built something like this to weave together time. Now, if Kang didn't build it, then in all likelihood, in the beginning, whoever built it to weave together a multiverse. And Kang just changed it or modified it so it could just weave the one sacred timeline. And because of that, it's, incapable right now in its current state of being able to weave together a multiverse. And Obi says a little bit later, I haven't gotten to that point exactly yet, but it sounds like he just knows how to fix it or change it so that it can weave together a multiverse instead of just the one sacred timeline, which is insane, I think. That's such a massive thing that he can do that almost seems like this is like god level. And you're just some guy in the sub basement. And it's like, yeah, sure, he knows everything about the TVA and how everything works. But you also know how to fix and or modify the machine that literally weaves time together. That something's a little bit sus with him. And I'll get to that later. Again, I'll get to that later. But Miss Minutes took care of this place. Which I still don't even know what a Miss Minutes is. Obviously, it's that holographic looking clock person, but what originally is that? What is it physically? Is it physical? And of course, it's now or never. They just have to do this thing. Stop the time slipping now. Mobius has to be in position. And then he writes on the dust on the machine. This is such attention to detail. I love it absolutely. Skin question mark. So good. And he's longingly looking at it. Oh, my poor skin. Will I have it after this? I don't know. Do I say goodbye to my skin right now? I guess I have to. And his face, you'll go out there. And just the thumbs up, And then Obi just pulls out, oh, this time thing that will keep track no matter where you are. And Mobius will lose all of his skin as you are lost to time forever. Got an hour. Nope, you got about 5 minutes. Gotta do this now. The armor is being raided. B-15 will handle it. And now the other two have to deal with this particular situation. He time slips again, and the time pruning stick gets dropped. Mobius should have just left it right there. It's clear that he doesn't. Because when Loki hops forward, because this is the future, he's hopped forward here. The time zap stick isn't here anymore. The prune stick. The skin question mark is still on the computer. So this is clearly the future. The stick isn't here anymore. So he must have taken it with him or put it somewhere else. He should have left it. He really just should have left it. This would have gone a lot better if he left it. But, the fact that Loki time slips forward with all his clothes and with the time watch, but the prune stick he doesn't go with is a bit odd, and I don't know if they'll ever explain that really. Is this cracked? A little bit of duct tape, that fixes it. Good old red-green. Duct tape fixes everything. If you're Canadian, you'll get that reference. I'm pretty sure that was like a Canadian show. The tube that goes into the back of Mobius's suit is, I think, unnecessarily massive. It looks like it's one of those diver tubes that supplies oxygen, but I don't think you would need a tube that big unless it's supplying more than just oxygen. Like some massive amount of power or shielding or something else. And then seeing the loom in season when I watched the season 2 trailer, I was like, this almost looks like threads being woven together or something like that. I was absolutely right. Absolutely right. And then Loki frantically running around, trying to find another one of those prune sticks. I'm gonna keep calling it a prune stick. And then Mobius setting the device to extract him. Now this scene on the TVA monitor, I missed it slightly, hold on. Let me try to get that in my own view. Pause it right here at 3450. This looks wild. This scene on the monitor looks absolutely insane. It almost looks like everything is falling apart. It looks like the loom is what's kind of in the middle. That, and then on one side, you have what looks like the sacred timeline being formed, and on the other side, you have absolute chaos. You have what looks like the sacred timeline split into like threads, all kinds of threads that are white, and then beyond the two orange or red lines, you have the multiverse branching from all of that, or the variants, or whatever it might be. Time branches branching from all of that in orange or red. I think it's meant to be orange and not red. Branching all of that beyond the two lines. I'm thinking that anything that the white line. Well, it's weird because you've seen other depictions of this exact same thing, and when you have a one sacred timeline, anything that branches from that is automatically orange. But here, I guess if you have the sacred timeline itself, just as strings free floating about, it's not color coded as orange, but as soon as it gets beyond the two orange lines, all of the beyond stuff is now orange coded. And I'm guessing that you're supposed to read it from left to right instead of from right to left. I kind of rather read it the other way, but I'm thinking if you're reading it from left to right, it looks like the loom is just being overloaded and isn't able to weave together all this chaos into a one perfect timeline anymore. And with all the alarm bells going off, it looks like it's just going to explode or cause a catastrophe. Or maybe it'll just set free the multiverse. I don't know. But if you read it the other way round, it almost looks like this is the point at which the sacred timeline, the perfect sacred timeline, has now changed and is now branching off into a proper infinite multiverse. So I'm pretty sure you're supposed to read it from left to right in this instant. Loki looking at his time thing, little pocket watch. He still has some time. Hop forward to Mobius or hop back into the past with the Mobius. And then Loki's frantically running around. It looks like everything in the TVA is just shutting down and losing power. You get to see the huge city. Just looks like it's just shutting down and losing power. And then you see Mobius pressing his button. And now it's time. The watch has turned green. He needs to prune himself now. This scene is odd. Because the phone is ringing suddenly. And Obi's like, we need to shut the blast doors now. We have 30 seconds. The phone is ringing. Everything's silent. Loki's just walking down this hall cautiously. He's approaching the phone as it's ringing. And then there's hands at the elevator trying to pry it open from the inside. And he's just staring. And Obi's counting down. 5, 4, 3. That's 3. 3. He clearly doesn't want to do this. He wants to give him more time, but he knows he can't. He has to start the shutdown procedure, shutting the blast doors, because he has no choice. Or the whole TVA will be destroyed, I assume. And he's telling Mobius to come back. It's already too late. He's lost the time. The way that the suit that's meant to survive this loom atmosphere with, I guess, raw time energy just bombarding him. I'm surprised that the duct tape is strong enough to last and not disintegrate, where like the rest of his suit looked like it's taking a beating, an absolute beating. And then you see what he's looking at the elevator, and Sylvie pushing open the doors, and him saying, "There you are." We don't get to see who uses the prune stick on Loki, but it's a good thing that they do. Whether it's Sylvie, whether it's somebody else in that moment. And Sylvie looks completely different with like a different haircut, a different outfit. And Loki's fine. The extractor extracted him, launched him and Mobius. And in that moment, he's like, we need to find Sylvie. Let me pause there. I have a strong suspicion, and I'm pretty sure I'm right about this. Though, of course, I could be wrong. Who knows? But I'm pretty sure I'm right that in that moment, he had a conversation with Sylvie. And in all likelihood, I think Sylvie was the one to have pruned him, saving him. They may have had a quick conversation, explaining what's going on, and her saying, you know, something is about to happen. You need to go back in time and make sure this doesn't happen. Make sure this sequence of events doesn't happen. Because I'm pretty sure in the moment we see this military start marching through and carrying all of these weapons into who knows where. They're probably entering the sacred timeline or the multiverse now and are plotting something. I'm pretty sure their plot is going to do something extremely dangerous to the future, not just the future of the TVA, but the future of the multiverse. And Sylvie has come back into the TVA to try to stop or fix this. I'm guessing and I'm predicting that she wasn't able to, and she's given the information to Loki, who she knows at this point is able, or at this point, she knows that Loki will be sent back to the past of the TVA, and he has the option or the opportunity to fix whatever's about to occur. So he needs to get to her in that past immediately, and then they need to figure out a solution to all of this mess. And I'm thinking that's how season 2 is going to play out. So now you have X5, it looks like, just walked by. And then B15 is wondering, like, where's everybody going? All of this for Sylvie? Clearly it's not. Clearly they're plotting something else. And I'm sure there is some way to figure out where they're going. Somewhere within the TVA there has to be some kind of computer system that could access their temp pads or whoever opened up this time door and figure out where all of these people are going. Whether they're going to the same place, whether they're going to different places. Are they actually going to the end of time to try to figure out what's happened there? Are they trying to find Sylvie, or are they just plotting something completely different? Like, you know, let's return this multiverse to a one sacred timeline again by setting detonators all across all of these branches and just having them all pruned away simultaneously to force fix it. Some of my ideas as to what they might be doing. And then we get, I guess, little sneak peeks as to what's going to be happening or little scenes from this season. I don't recall some of these in season 1 during the credits. I could be wrong though. The little image of Kang's wristwatch, Tempad wristwatch, being left on that desk. I believe that Sylvie does leave it there. I want to believe that Sylvie, after killing him, and after going through all of the emotions she needs to, she just leaves it there. Opens up a portal, as we see right after the credits, to Oklahoma, 1982. on what looks like a branch timeline. And I don't see it on her wrist. I think she just opens up this portal and goes here and leaves it behind. Because she believes she just succeeded, everything's fine now. I don't know if she even believes that Kang will return to that same place. So I think she's like, okay, it's just fine if I just leave it. I don't want to rule. I don't want to deal with being what he was. I want everything to be properly free, so nobody being at that palace, nobody ruling, is a good thing. Everybody's free. So she could leave it as it is. Nobody's able to get there anymore. And then she gets to just live her life. One thing I'm questioning is why she didn't try to return to Asgard instead. Why she decided to return to an Earth and Oklahoma of all places. Why she didn't try to go back and see what life would have been like on Asgard and just go to, live as a regular citizen back on her home planet. Or return to the Frost Giants and live on their home planet just as a regular citizen. Or return to. She said something about a long distance relationship with a postman, I believe. If it was a relationship with the postman in an apocalypse timeline, she technically has the power to rescue him from that apocalypse and bring him to somewhere else where they both could live somewhere in peace. So I'm wondering if she might have either been lying about that postman, or he didn't really mean that much to her, or whatever it may be. She could have been lying, who knows. But it's also interesting she didn't return to the TVA or try to go visit Loki. So obviously in her mind she would have been a wanted individual, and maybe she just didn't want to face the potential chaos that she believes she might have caused. I I wonder if she knows where she sent Loki to. Like, does she know she sent him back to the TVA? Instead, she could have tried to send him back to Asgard or back to Earth or somewhere else. Though sending him back to the TVA is the right move, no matter what. That's the safest move, and probably the best option, because from there, he'd be able to figure out where he wants to go next. And if she believes she sent him back to the place where he originated from, then you'd have Mobius there anyways to help him out. The question is, why didn't she try to return to the TVA? I'm I'm guessing she probably thinks that the chaos that would have occurred from her doing all of this and freeing all of the timelines would have caused chaos in the TVA. And it was probably her hope that nobody would have taken over the TVA and tried to return things to the way they were, and that Mobius and Loki would have figured it out and everything would have been at peace. Or maybe she didn't even think about that. Maybe she didn't even think that far. Maybe in her mind the mission is complete. Kang is dead. Things will never return to the way they were because Kang can never return there. And nobody exists that can go back there and become a dictator anymore. So everything is fine now. The multiverse is free now. And I'm guessing that, if anything, you would be able to determine if any TVA agents were to show up or timelines would start being pruned. She, being in a branch timeline, would need to be pruned. Therefore, if they show up and try to do that, she'll know that things have gone back to the way they were, and she'd need to do something about that. And the mission would probably restart again. But I'm wondering if we'll get any insight as to why she chose here, if she even chose. Or the Tempad just opened up a portal, and this is where she ended up. She's like, send me anywhere, and this was where it ended up. Just random. Either way, we know from the trailers she ends up working at this McDonald's after saying she wants to try one of everything. Or at least, first she says, I don't want it to be a possum meat or squirrel or raccoon or whatever. And I don't want it to be, living. And then the guy going through all of the different menu options and things, and her being like, I want to try one of everything. She says that while looking around. I'm thinking she wants to actually try living her life and exploring what it means to live peacefully. Getting a job. In the trailer, she has a job at that McDonald's. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the exact same McDonald's. She probably wants to start making money, start seeing what it's like to have a house, friends, relationships, and get to see how other people live their lives, experience tasting other kinds of foods, maybe even going on vacation, going on trips, seeing the world. I don't know how much of that she actually will end up doing. It looks almost like her entire life is that McDonald's. Or she finds out that, you need money to do all these things, and you're kind of limited with having no money and no identity. So this McDonald's gig is, for now, what you need to do. And Loki and Mobius end up showing up before she's able to get enough money to try to live a life, try to have a life. But we will see. I'm guessing that that's going to be further into the season, and I'm predicting that episode 2 will be Loki and Mobius trying to hunt down where Sylvie might be. And from the trailer, we know, and from the end of Quantumania, we know that they end up in a place with one of the variants of Kang. And I'm thinking episode 2 might end up being that, where they start hopping about trying to find Sylvie or any traces of Sylvie. And in doing so, they end up at that place where Kang is, having to deal with that particular Kang, and then maybe either that place. Yeah, I'm thinking that place might be the place where Sylvie is. They'll end up in the same, maybe, town where Sylvie is, or the same state, and they'll just have to trek over to her McDonald's. And they'll end up encountering Kang first, and Ravonna and Miss Minutes, because I'm pretty sure there's a whole scene with all of them. So I'm predicting that that's kind of probably episode 2. Nearing the end of episode 2, I think they'll reunite with Sylvie, or find out exactly where she is. And then episode 3 maybe would be them reuniting and figuring stuff out from there. Then probably episode 4, or end of episode 3, episode 4, we'll find out what the military, the TVA military people, are planning and plotting and what they're trying to do. And then, like, episode 5 and 6 would likely be dealing with the consequences of all of that. And I kind of want episode 6 to end on a cliffhanger again, and I kind of hope for a season 3 of Loki. Or at the very least, this leading into something in the cinematic universe. But I still want to see these characters. I want to see them again in the main cinematic universe in a movie. Would it be too much to ask for them to end up in Deadpool? Maybe. I know that Deadpool's supposed to deal with the TVA in some degree. The TVA is supposed to be a part of it a little bit. I kinda want to see Mobius and Loki and Sylvie there. Maybe B-15, maybe Casey. I don't know though. I don't know where this is gonna go. But hopefully there's a happy ending. Hopefully nobody ends up being killed. I would absolutely hate that for any of these main characters. I kind of want to see more of them, or at the very least, give them their peaceful ending. Give them an ending where they could be like, B-15 wants to go back to living as part of the multiverse. Go back to her home somewhere where she had a family and a life. And maybe some of the other TVA agents, we get to see them choose the same path. And Mobius might choose, you know what, I have the option of having my jet ski and living a life somewhere in the multiverse on the regular timeline. But instead, I hope we do actually get to see him riding one of those and having fun. But then at the end of all that, I kind of see him choosing to come back to the TVA and being like, although I can choose to go back to a life and maybe even go back to my original timeline that I was plucked from, him instead choosing to stay a part of the TVA and try to rebuild it for something better. I kind of see that for him, and I kind of see something similar for both Loki and Sylvie, where even if given the option of going back to wherever they originally belonged to and having a life somewhere, they've gotten to the point where they don't necessarily see that as making either of them happy, and instead ensuring that something like Kang never happens again, or ensuring that something like a One Sacred Timeline never happens again, will be their life's mission now, together. And going forward, instead of, you know, piecing out and just having a happy life somewhere together or separate, but just having a happy life, maybe in Oklahoma or back on Asgard or wherever either of them might choose to try to go, they decide to dedicate their lives to making the TVA a better place and guarding the multiverse against something like Kang showing up again. I kind of see that being the proper ending or a better ending for them instead of any of them dying or even instead of them going off to have a peaceful life. But instead of dying, I would rather them just retire and go off and have a peaceful life. Don't just kill them for no reason. Don't just off Loki because you don't know what to do with his character, or off Loki just because it might motivate Sylvie or motivate some other character to do something, or off Sylvie for the same reason to motivate Loki or to motivate some other character to do something, or off Mobius to motivate the two of them to do something, or to motivate some other character, or to drive the plot forward, or whatever it might be. It almost seems like we need to move past that style of story writing. But I will end this here, and I will see you for season 2, episode 2, when that releases in like 2 days. But it'll probably take me some time to just watch it, think about it, and then actually record a thing. So see you then. I literally just ended the recording of the previous episode for season 2, episode 1 of Loki, and then I completely forgot that I was supposed to talk about something. So I'm gonna record this and attach that to the end of that one. So basically, what I had forgotten to say was there is something that I had seen mentioned on Twitter where Obi, or Ouroboros, might not be a good guy character and might actually be one of the bad guys. So I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit. Now I know this episode is quite long, and I'm going to be adding this onto the end of the other episode instead of just putting this at the beginning of the next episode, just because I wanted this to be part of this episode. So I can kind of see where people might be coming from when they say that, and I didn't read any of the explanation for why this might be the case because I hadn't even seen the episode yet. But just from this episode, I would say that his character just seems a little bit too convenient and too knowledgeable. And on the one hand, it could be that he's such a unique variant of somebody that Miss Minutes and Kang wanted to keep him completely isolated from everybody else, but also they couldn't risk wiping his memory because of how capable and knowledgeable he was. So he is actually a good guy character. It's just they just kept people away from him and kept him isolated so they could use him as much as they possibly could without ever having to worry about wiping his memory or anything like that. And they knew that they never would have had to, I guess, keep too close of an eye on him because he always has work coming in. He's always busy nonstop. He never sleeps. He's basically being kept to work constantly. And as long as the work keeps being done, they know he's not getting into any trouble, or he probably doesn't have much time to really think about causing trouble or doing anything. And he probably doesn't have any time, if he can't even sleep, to leave his little office area or explore or do things or question anything. So on the one hand, he could just be a good guy character just being used, fully being used by the TVA and by Miss Minutes and Kang. On the other hand, he could be the type of character where he's working with them secretly. He's always been on the side of Miss Minutes and Kang, and he knows a lot more than he's letting on. He's just secretly having to go along with everything that's happening until he's able to fix things such that it's back to one sacred timeline. I'm thinking when people saw the scene of the loom displayed on the monitor when Loki had hopped forward in time within the TVA, that could be almost interpreted as the loom has been fixed to force the timeline back into one singular timeline. And I think I had mentioned this during my recording literally like 30 minutes ago, that it almost looks like if read from left to right, that everything's just being forced back into one sacred timeline. If that's the case, then with us knowing that Obi is able to fix it and mess with that machine, that loom, it could be that he's just setting things back to the way they're supposed to be. Now, that could either be interpreted as he's been lying the whole time, and he's actually secretly working with Miss Minutes. Like, he could be completely brainwashed to believing the TVA's mission, or it could be the other side of the coin, where in his mind he sees no other way to fix things and to fix the TVA than to restore the one sacred timeline. In his mind, it could be everything completely gets destroyed, all timelines get destroyed, the TVA itself gets destroyed, if he doesn't do that. And it could have nothing to do with Kang or Miss Minutes or Ravonna or anybody else. And it could just be his solution to fixing things. He almost seems like the person who, he's the one keeping everything running and keeping things together. Anytime there's any kind of problem, he's the one who probably knows how to fix it. If Miss Minutes can't handle it, and Kang himself isn't going to just show up and fix something. So it almost looks like if there's something that their own engineers, I'm assuming there are other engineers in there, there's other technicians, there's people to do regular work on any of the machines. But if it's something drastic or major, then this is the guy you're going to try to fix that or get it fixed. So I could see it one of both ways. I kind of rather him be the good guy character because he seems like that. He seems friendly, he seems nice. He is helping them genuinely. It looks like to me from my perspective. I don't know if I necessarily see him being a bad guy, though I haven't read any of the ideas surrounding him as a bad guy. He just seems like, since he hasn't interacted with any other humans or beings at all, which is another thing I should have mentioned in season 1, there aren't any other beings in the TVA. They're all human shaped. There's no aliens, there's no anybody else, but you know that they should exist and they should work within the TVA. It's just within the area of the TVA we've seen, there are only human shaped looking figures, including Loki, and there's no other shaped beings at all. But that's again besides the point, other than Miss Minutes, of course. Um, but I do rather him be a good guy character because we have enough of bad guy character material in Kang and potentially Ravonna and potentially X5 and the entire battalion of soldiers marching out. So I kinda want to see him also be one of the good guys, also working with the good guys. He strikes me as the kind of character because he hasn't had any interaction with anybody in like 400 years, and the only interaction 400 years ago was some guy showing up and he was kind of lost and he pointed him in the right direction, and then before that, some other guy showing up who time slipped. I don't know if the oddities in the way he operates is simply because he's just doesn't have much social interaction or any in like the past 400 or 400 plus years, or it's that there's something sinister behind it. I'd rather believe that it's because he's just kind of socially awkward and he's like clearly really capable and really smart and has a lot on his plate, and this is just his response, his way of responding to everything that's been happening, is he is this type of character, and it's not necessarily pointing to him being necessarily a bad guy character. It does seem like he was genuinely concerned about Loki and Loki coming back when he was doing the countdown. It did seem like he was genuinely concerned and wanting to help them, even though in the beginning he seemed kind of like, I don't know what's going on, but I clearly know that that's time slipping, and he's almost like one of those, I don't know how you put it, like a search engine type thing, where his job is basically provide answer, and now his job is kind of like interact with these people who are clearly desperate for help, and it looks like he kind of throughout just episode 1 kind of learns to go with the flow and try his best to seemingly help them. So I would rather lean that he is a good guy character and not a bad guy character. And I will end it here. Again, another end to this podcast episode because I needed to very quickly interject this extra thing in here. So you'll hear the podcast end, and then you'll hear this extra bit. But whatever, this is just how it is. I just completely forgot to talk about it, even though I said like twice within the episode I was going to talk about this, but I forgot. And I didn't want it to be awkwardly part of the next episode because I don't know how long from now that'll be. Probably like a week, maybe less. Don't know. Anyways, bye.